Okay, let's jump right into it. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to take a really fascinating look at the anatomy of an effective prompt. Look, if you use AI regularly, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Sometimes it feels like absolute magic, right? And other times, it's just completely frustrating. So today, we're going to figure out how to take prompting from this mysterious, kind of frustrating guesswork and turn it into a predictable, highly structured checklist.
We've all been there, asking ourselves, why did my prompt fail? Seriously, if you've ever felt that crushing frustration of getting a super generic, totally inaccurate, or just wildly badly formatted output from Claude, and then you had to waste your precious time rewriting that request over and over, let me just assure you, you are not alone. It literally happens to the best of us. But here's the great news. There's actually a science to fixing it.
So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we're going to look at how to stop the prompting guesswork altogether. Then, we'll break down what's called the 5-component stack. After that, we'll dive into minding the context gap, and finally, we'll wrap up with diagnosing weak prompts.
All right, part 1, stop the prompting guesswork. We are moving from trial and error to a reliable checklist.
You see, a truly strong prompt is almost like a living organism. It's built from very specific, interconnected components. And when an output goes completely off the rails, it's usually because your prompt is actually missing one of its vital organs. And that brings us to this idea of the component stack. This is basically a structured checklist of 5 distinct components that carry almost all the weight in a professional prompt. Honestly, just putting a name to these components is a game changer. It empowers you to run this reliable mental checklist before you send any major request to the AI. It takes all the emotion and randomness out of the process and just replaces it with pure logic and structure.
Moving right along to section 2, the 5-component stack. Let's look at the vital organs of a strong prompt.
All right, first up is the role. This is exactly who you want Claude to be for your specific task. Are you looking for a really sharp financial analyst, maybe a ruthless editor, or a super rigorous policy reviewer? By defining this component, you're establishing the entire foundation. It sets the specific vocabulary, the depth of knowledge, and the baseline assumptions that Claude is going to bring to the table. Basically, it sets the stage for everything else. Next, we have context. And listen, this is absolutely critically important because it's the component that professionals skip over the most. For some reason, we tend to assume the AI just magically knows the background of our day, but it doesn't. Context provides the background Claude simply cannot know unless you explicitly give it. We're talking about things like your target audience, a specific business situation, any prior decisions your team just made, or the actual source material itself.
The third organ is the task. This is the specific action you need completed, and it should be stated as a crystal clear instruction with one primary, unambiguous verb. Think words like summarize, compare, draft, or identify. Giving the AI just one primary verb is huge. It ensures there's absolutely no confusion about what the actual goal of the prompt is.
Fourth on our checklist, we have constraints. Think of these as your guardrails. You're setting boundaries here, like the required length of the output, the exact tone you want, what specific details absolutely must be included, what to leave out entirely, and what to avoid. Nailing your constraints keeps the final output usable right out of the gate, so you aren't doing heavy manual editing later on.
And finally, the 5th vital organ, output format. This simply defines the exact physical shape of the result you want. Whether you need a perfectly clean data table, a snappy bulleted list, a highly formal 3-paragraph memo, or just a draft email. Stating this right up front is going to save you an entire iteration of frustrating back and forth. You get exactly what you need, looking exactly how you need it to look, literally on the very first try.
Now hold on. Before you start thinking that every single interaction you have with Claude needs to be some massive essay, it's really important to note, not every prompt needs all 5 components. While a quick, simple question really just needs a task and maybe a constraint, it's the complex, high-stakes client deliverables that require the full anatomy. The real skill you're developing here is just noticing exactly which components a specific task actually needs.
All right, section 3, minding the context gap and building the description competency.
I actually want to slow down for a quick second here, because we're hitting on a deeply relatable, superhuman habit, assuming the AI can just read your mind. We all do it, right? But it is the root cause of so many bad outputs. Just read this really powerful quote from the source material with me. Anything that lives only in your head or outside a connected source is a context gap. Think about that.
Unless you explicitly connect a source, Claude cannot see your inbox, it doesn't know your company's org chart, and it definitely doesn't remember what your boss said in last week's meeting. Context gaps are, without a doubt, the single most common reason prompts underperform, especially when you're just starting out.
So what's the fix? Well, the solution to this is what we call the description competency. If you look at the left side here, we have what is only in your head. That's your assumed context, which is completely invisible to the AI. But on the right side, we have what Claude actually sees because you've provided explicit context. The goal is to make a habit of making each component explicitly visible to Claude rather than just, hoping it'll figure it out. Bottom line, if it's not written down or connected, it literally does not exist to the AI.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 4, diagnosing a weak prompt, also known as the diagnostic clinic.
Welcome to the clinic. This is where we learn how to take a really disappointing prompt, hold it up to the light, spot exactly which piece from our stack is missing, and basically cure it. This is where you put all this anatomy into practice. What's brilliant here is that these 5 components actually double as a diagnostic checklist. You can instantly map a bad output symptom directly to its missing anatomical part. For example, if you get a generic output that's just full of unhelpful advice, boom, you're missing the context component. If the symptom is that the AI took the totally wrong action, your task verb was probably way too ambiguous. And if the output is just way too long or the tone is completely weird, you're definitely suffering from absent constraints. You can literally just work backward from the failure to find the cure. It's amazing.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a direct challenge. Think back to your very last frustrating AI interaction. Ask yourself right now, which vital organ was missing? Was it the role, the context, maybe the constraints? Identify it, apply this 5-component checklist, and just stop the guesswork once and for all. Knowing all this, what are you going to build with your next perfectly structured prompt?